Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to call this Board of Health meeting for September 17th, 2019 to order at 6 p.m. The agenda is subject to change and includes those items reasonably anticipated by the chair to be discussed at the meeting. Not all agenda items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being recorded by WACA-TV. Is there anybody else in the room recording? Seeing none, we'll look for citizens' participation first. And seeing none, I am going to move that we bring the item 6E on our agenda, the discussion on EEE, up to this position right now, so that we can have Steve join our conversation and discuss some concerns about evening events, in particular one that he is running in October. Is anyone willing to make a motion to do that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes 4-0. Steve, if you want to pull up a chair to the table, we'll get you a microphone.
I don't mind, okay, thanks. I don't mind standing. I try and stand at work.
Whatever makes you happy.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to put a little bit of context to this conversation and the purpose of it. And it almost seems that a couple of members on the board, on the select board, and I were thinking the same thing at the same time. Earlier today, it hit me that this event is happening only because I was about to buy tickets to it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, it's outdoors. It's behind where the spraying would probably happen. It's behind the body of water where mosquitoes could breed. And it's after dusk. So I thought, well, as a board, we made a decision to ban events after dusk because we felt that that was in the safety of our residents. I'm not going to speak for the select board. They're meeting tomorrow. I suspect they'll discuss this topic. But I think that I have some thoughts on what I think that the actions that we need to take as a board, not specifically geared toward this event, although it will impact it. But Steve Greenberg, you run this event pretty much.
This would be third annual
And the third annual. So
Metro West Bear Fest.
I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you.
And have you
I
discuss.
must look pretty bald. Sitting down from the back. Thank you for letting me speak to the board. I appreciate it, and that's great. But I'll tell you how this came to my attention by the Ashland Greater Lions sent around minutes of their board meeting, and the Ashland Greater Lions ladies have volunteered at this event for all 3 years. And in their agenda, they mentioned that they were participating in this event, but they had EEE concerns. And my wife's a nurse, and she and I have been discussing it for a few days. But obviously, it's on the minds of everybody in Metro West, and I'm very thankful that it's on the mind of the board. So traditionally, this event, which I think last year we had 300 plus attendees, and the hours are 6 to 10. And last year was early October and brutally cold, and first night of the Red Sox in the World Series. We don't have to worry about that this year. But the way it worked, we worked with a local tent company, and just before the grass at the end of the hut top in the rear lot of the VFW is where we had the tent, and it's a very large tent, 40 by 100. And in the tent, we had traditionally had cornhole tournament, some other activities, beer sampling, and outside the tent, and dancing and band, and people have a lot of fun. And outside the tent, we've had food trucks. So in giving this some quite a bit of thought, and mostly today, I've had conversations with some folks here in Town Hall. I've had conversations with the tent vendor and some of the beer vendors. And what was thought to be a more prudent, if that's the correct word, way of approaching this is to get permission, which I did, from the VFW to pretty much attach the tent itself to the rear entrance of the VFW. So their everyday patrons will be able to come in and out. Our attendees to the Beer Fest will be able to come in and out as they please. And we'll eliminate any food trucks. So we'll have the VFW Marconi's folks as one of our vendors, and that will all be cooked inside the VFW. So that will be, again, inside seating and cooking. So we won't have folks hanging around outside of a food truck. So we'll have probably 2 to 3 vendors inside. So food will be inside the VFW, beer, band, and there's some folks there that sell memorabilia, and there's a sports consultant that would all be in the tent and with no seating. So I was hopeful that I don't want to say security, but those measures might eliminate concerns that this board might have, the attendees might have. I'm also going to investigate hiring a company that maybe could spray on Friday and/or Saturday morning to take care of potential issues. You know, we can't guarantee how hot or cold it's going to be in 3 weeks or 3 minutes. So again, I thought what I would do is lay out on this plan, show you exactly where we'd try and put the tent, which again, the tent is flame retardant. The tent vendor gets a permit from the building department, conversation and permission through the fire department, if I'm not mistaken. That's the way it works. And you know, we're going to try and do the right thing.
So so you're gonna expect potentially that same 300 people, so there'll be
It's tough
enough
to, yeah,
room
it's tough.
in the VFW and the tent, as long as you feel like there's enough room in there to accommodate those?
Well, the same size tent held 330 some odd
Oh, wow.
folks last
Oh,
year.
so it's
But we
big.
did have the food trucks outside.
Got you.
So the lounge in the lower level of VFW, that could accommodate 100, I don't know what the fire department limit is
Right.
on the number of people, but at least 100 people. So there's also the upstairs if need be. But, you know, there's a bar in there for those who aren't interested in beer. And again, we put the vendors around the perimeter, the band on the perimeter, and the sports memorabilia and consultant on the perimeter. And folks won't be able to sit because I think seating is something that probably wouldn't make sense. You know, we want people moving, I guess, and not, and we won't allow food to be eaten in the tent.
I have a question, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Is the tent covered from outside too?
There are plastic,
So
translucent, I guess, KG for
yeah,
like.
that's fine.
Yeah, but he also,
It's enclosed in terms of the air-wise, but there's no mosquitoes flying in there. It's closed.
you know, I gave that a lot of thought today, and it is closed. And I guess what I compared it to was, you know, we all have to open some door to get into our house, you know?
Can't help.
And
That- yeah.
what I want to do.
Minimize it.
I
that's what-
want to minimize how long people are standing outside, and just keep people as protected as possible.
And parking-wise, are they going to park near the bushes and trees, or are they
Well,
going to be using somebody else's parking? Because it seems to be
Yes, we have an agree-
limited compared to what you have.
Right,
parking
we
spaces.
have an arrangement with the Connect Church across the street. And I have an email out to the MBTA, who I've worked with many years in the past, but they keep getting kicked back because I think these guys are retired. So we do work with the MBTA lot. I'll have a conversation with the folks at Burnham's who've been accommodating, as long as we don't, you know, abuse it. And, you know, we can go as far down as Worcester Air Conditioning, but Connect Church, which is directly across the street, they got a pretty substantial capacity. So there is parking in front of the V,
Right, but
But
would
the
you,
back is-
would
the
you
back-
restrict it so that the people don't park around there and
Right.
then get
Right.
into a situation where they're closer to the bushes and get affected by this
Right.
possible
The
mosquito?
only ones that get a little hot under the collar about the parking there are the VFW members, who've been members for a long, long time, and we accommodate them as best we can.
Gotta get their dollar Bud Light.
Well, yeah, they're,
Oh, it's fine, that's.
it's a great value, by the way.
If you
sorry.
avoid them parking near the trees and bushes, that might save them from this possible mosquito issues.
Yes, so what we've done in the past is to the left and the right, which are traditionally entrance exits to the rear of the VFW, we have sawhorses that go across both sides. Chief asked us, previous chief asked us to do that, and we've maintained that. This will be the third time.
So my question, I have a question from Mark. Of the whole event that they're running, the things that are under our jurisdiction really is just the food, right?
It would be the mandate the board set for the outdoor seating at a food establishment. So it would be that part of it, as well as the licensees of food establishments would have to be licensed, which they are.
Okay.
Marconi's is licensed to be the in-house, I guess
Yeah.
she's the in-house cook, as well as, we just need to know who the food vendors will be. They have to notify us if they're already licensed, they just have to notify us they're at a different event, that's all.
Each of the vendors are locally licensed. Ballymont?
Ballymore.
Which
Ballymont,
they've
I think.
already notified us, I believe.
Yes, and the bagel table's considering it, but,
Yeah, they just have to tell us they're on the road. If they do, we just have to make sure they have the appropriate setup,
Okay.
and our
So-
inspector will probably look at it.
And- And all of the food you said is gonna be indoors?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So,
So they're out of that.
looking at, I'm trying to look at this from a big picture, because I think that, I'm gonna propose an action that we take in general, not on this event, but in general as a board. But clearly, there's good faith actions going on here to try and make this event, and I want it to happen. I'm certainly not in any way, but I wanna protect everybody, and I think that
Absolutely.
you're looking to do that too. So if the food is inside, that's really, I think from, obviously, the food inspection piece of it is a whole different thing. That's gonna happen either way. As far as anything else, technically, it's private property, right? So
Correct.
we can't say you can't have an event. So that's, that's kind of a thing, not that I would suggest that either. So, okay. And I like that, the repositioning of the tent is a really nice idea. Very good, okay. That answers my questions for now. Anybody else have anything that they're
I'm glad that they've taken enough precautions to avoid
interested
it
in,
as much as they
that they wanna
can.
contribute?
And we can't absolutely avoid it, but they've taken enough precaution to do
Yeah,
it
for
as
sure.
much as they can.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a spray out back there,
Yeah.
I don't know enough about how well those things work and how long they take to work and all that kind of stuff.
Is it a Friday?
If you can
Saturday.
offer,
Saturday.
if you can have at the door, we've been trying to get some of the, I know the,
Sprays.
what was the event they had last weekend? Dragonfly. They had bug sprays available
Okay.
right at the entrance, and if you can make those available to people,
Yeah, I
just
was
as a
gonna-
peace of mind event,
I
have a
was
few
gonna
cans.
get some DEET and maybe, Mark, or if there are spray vendors that you're aware of,
There really aren't. We utilize Central Mass Mosquito, and I believe they already responded that, what was the response, Laura?
Is
They
that this
actually
one here?
just sprayed right over that area, as
Yeah.
far as if you, on that map, I zoomed in on that map, so.
As he's reading that, the other thing I would recommend is that if you can get a fan at the entrance, so you're
Oh.
blowing it out.
I
it
have fans,
might-
Mark.
Yeah, just might keep some of, just air, you can walk
Yeah.
through it.
Okay.
This is the response. What was the question?
Steve had, or someone had asked if they could spray the property,
Okay.
and that was, Laura sent that out for a question.
Okay, so their response, this is Timothy Deschamps, the Executive Director of Central Mass Mosquito, says, "Hi Laura, we would have some limitation due to the Sudbury River, but if the weather cooperates, temps over 55 at night, it could be possible."
So if I did my own foggers, you know, just some Home Depot stuff?
Yeah, I suppose if there's no food activity at the time,
Okay,
read the label.
Yeah.
Make sure it meets our pesticide requirements, which it probably will. We have our expert sitting right next to you.
Right behind you.
And so most of those products are natural, well, they're not man-made from natural products. Permethrin is one, simethrin's another. They come usually as a derivative from a plant, so.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, I mean, if they're saying it may or may not work, I wouldn't invest money in something that isn't gonna work
Yeah,
just to
right.
do it. I mean, I
it's
know
not my
that
nature, but yeah.
temperature.
one of the things that was around a couple years back, and I don't know if they're still in or
Because
if they worked, is that there were these little things that you hook a propane tank to that,
Yeah,
that do something, that maybe you can rent those things. I don't know.
Businesses.
Any action that you could take that would work is obviously appreciated.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, and I'm sure that Mr. Hart over there would certainly offer advice to you if you ask
Okay.
him nicely.
Great.
If we're on that triple E right now,
Mhm.
there's been some confusion with restaurants.
Mhm.
They can eat outside during the day
Correct.
up
Mhm.
until 7 at night. I know the bagel table brought in their tables and told me that they were told they couldn't eat outside at all, and I said, no, that's not true. But somebody told them that it
There's
was.
some water issues going on in front there
Yeah.
with the repair.
Mhm.
But I have to say, Friday morning, I was across the street in a neighborhood from Lake Whitehall, and I was in some tall grass, and they were flying all around. And
Yeah, they will
I
be
got out of there
during
as quick
the
as
day.
I could, but,
Especially when you're near an area of that nature, you know.
Yeah,
wet-
standing
wet
water.
Area.
Yeah.
But the cans of mosquito spray, I was gonna recommend that, which you already noted. And it's nice too, if they're going back to their car and they gotta walk, they can spray themselves.
Okay.
At their own will. You
Right.
can't make them
Yeah,
at
yeah,
their
yeah.
own will.
I mean, they have wipes now, too.
Yeah, but they're hard to find right now, but
oh, yeah,
they
okay,
are.
I have a
right.
feeling, I'm hoping, the state said they would contact our larger pharmaceutical companies at the retail level to see if they can get more up this way, more of their deep products and wipes and so
Okay.
forth.
Steve, so that the attendance doesn't go down because of people fearing this, maybe you could put on the advertisement that everything's going to be indoors, even in tents, and to bring your bug spray if you're worried.
Right. I think I'll wait till tomorrow evening's meeting is over and see what the
Okay.
results are there, and then,
Select board goes, yeah.
you know, with that, yeah, absolutely, whether it's social media or,
Yeah, I hope
Our-
people don't stay away thinking they're gonna.
well, you know, I'm asking people and they go, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. You know,
Yeah.
it's, everybody's busy and they don't necessarily focus on what they should, not that I do all the time either, but, yeah, we'll get the word out and,
I think it's good to do that, but, you know, there's a wide fear factor that they will have it, if wrong things comes out. It's better to assure them that every precaution is being taken,
yeah,
and also, we have addressed this issue.
In good faith,
And
if
tomorrow
I end
somebody
up
else-
not buying tickets out of fear, I'll make a donation anyway.
thank you very much.
But I definitely think that, Steve, you've done everything you've said, that you're clearly taking steps that are very, in my opinion, I think the board would agree, are very satisfactory.
No, and thank you, and everybody in town hall, you folks, the vendors so far, everybody has said they don't want people to be afraid. They'll help try and do the right thing, and last thing that, you know, when we did the race, my greatest concern was safety, and same here, so
Okay, good.
thank you for letting me speak, and I thank Mr. Hart for letting me come first, and hope you all have a great evening, and I hope to see many of you at the Beer Fest.
I'm glad you're on TV now.
Oh, thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Steve.
So,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time thinking about all of this today, and about safety in general. And in the email that I sent to all of you earlier, and I had a conversation with Steve Mitchell earlier, and with Brandy from the select board, who both had very different ideas and thoughts. And again, they'll meet tomorrow and decide whatever they're gonna decide, which could ever. But I think as a Board of Health, we made a decision to take action a couple of weeks ago, because we felt it was the right one. And I'm gonna propose, I'm gonna ask you to consider a motion in a moment, and we'll discuss it if it's seconded, that I think is the responsible thing to do as a board, to take action. Luckily, because of what Steve just told us, I don't think it will negatively impact that event, and I think it's the only scheduled event that it could affect, but I think it's an important statement to make by the board, so I'll make the motion first. That effective immediately, all permits, licenses, and permissions granted by the Town of Ashland Board of Health that cover activities that take place outdoors have a curfew of dusk. This curfew shall remain in effect until the triple E risk level is no longer deemed high or critical by the Mass Department of Public Health and the Town of Ashland Health Agent Director, and the Board of Health has voted to remove the curfew. Anybody want to second that?
So would we have to wait, discussion?
We got to second it before we can discuss it.
I'll second it.
Okay, now we
Um,
can discuss it.
So would we have to wait to meet again to lift this? That's my concern on
Yeah.
that.
that would
Worded
be-
as it is, yes, and I only do that, and we can modify the motion to remove that to give Mark the authority to do that, to do that.
Yeah.
And that, I'll leave that, to the board to decide. I think that it's a serious enough case that,
Yeah, well, I would trust Mark to make
oh, I
the
trust
call.
Mark, I trust
Yeah.
Mark also, and I'll leave it, and I'll ask his
If-
opinion in a
That way,
second.
we don't have to convene a special meeting just to take that.
I'll
vote.
ask his opinion in a second, and
Yeah.
we can even add if the Department of Public Health lowers the curfew or takes away takes away the risk warning,
Critical
that
risk.
that it be taken. I did
Automatically
that basically as a backup to Mark, right? So that Mark can make the decision and have us backing him up on it.
Absolutely,
That was my thought behind wording it the way I did,
right. Well,
because it's a serious decision.
absolutely. Well, Mark's following the Department of Public Health guidelines,
Mhm.
which I
Correct.
think
Sure.
we should follow as well.
And I wait on their guidance based on their knowledge and expertise.
Of course.
And I did find out they will not lower our risk no matter what until, when they do, it'll go to zero risk. So I have a feeling it will be the first hard frost that we'll hear from the state related to eliminating the risk. But they will not drop it.
Not drop it
Once
until-
you're at critical, you don't go back.
The other thing that I question on the motion is that, it says effective immediately, all permits, licenses, and permissions granted by the Town of Ashland Board of Health that cover activities that take place outdoors have a curfew of dusk. Well, the one we were just talking about has outdoor activities.
Right, but
So you're not-
the only permissions that are ours would be the food vendors, and they wouldn't be serving food outside according to him, so it wouldn't be affected. So where this would come into effect, and you can tell me if the wording doesn't cover it properly, because this is what my goal was. Let's say they had, Molly Mar was a good example, or whatever food vendors whether it be a food truck or a food cart or a food table that was set up outside. The idea was that their license that they have now doesn't have a drop dead time. This would force them to stop serving at dusk.
The vendors have to take initiative to say, okay.
The
we have to stop
licensees,
it.
this isn't them, so in other words, the event doesn't have a food license from us. There are vendors, for instance, Marconi's, which is housed in that place, does have a food license. So they would have to stop serving food at dusk if it were outside. In this case, Steve said that he's bringing all the food inside, so it's not going to
This
affect.
doesn't forbid to
Very
have the event done, but the food cannot be served outside. That's the only thing that it does.
And the only other, I like it, the only other thing I might add is that because of, the days getting shorter, that definition of dusk, I think we ought to say, maybe on the Ashland website, look
This-
at.
This would have
Perfect.
to be
Yeah,
part of it,
okay,
yeah.
That's awesome.
It's actually, I did
Perfect.
write in there as defined in supporting documentation, but in the other motion we have,
Yeah,
we defined it as this, so it would be the same
That's great.
definition.
Which is the chart from, I believe that was from Department of Public
yeah,
Health.
right.
And looking out at that time, looking out around that time, you're looking at 6:30 PM
For that event.
for that
Beer
event,
fest.
around that time.
Chris,
Yeah.
a question for Mark on this one. What happens if a Framingham restaurant want to serve food? What do they do?
They have to get permitted through us. So if they come to Ashland, they would have to get a permit to serve food in Ashland, so they would end up being under this vote.
Right, if they're serving food in VFW, private place, why would they have?
They still have to tell us they're serving as a caterer or get a license as a temporary food event.
So any private event that happens there,
Even
they have to do
private,
it?
unless it's in your backyard, a cookout or something
like-
like that.
There are lots of weddings and other things happen in
Yeah.
VFW. Have you had those?
They are using Marconi's is what we've been told. There have been families that just have a wedding in there and they
Yeah.
bring their own food, which is fine, cause it's a cultural thing. There's certain cultures
Right,
that
but
prefer
how
their
do you,
own
how do
food.
you know that that was not supplied by
They
a
are
restaurant?
required, the owner of any, well, not owners, I should say owners of any club are required to let us know when they have a food vendor that comes in to serve that is, say, a Framingham franchise or permitted in
But
Framingham.
have they so far
They
notified us?
usually use well, I don't wanna give out names, but there's a
I,
vendor
that's
in
really
town.
good.
When
Has
there's a
anybody?
vendor in town, it's Marconi's, or there's another vendor in town that does most of the
Right,
catering.
but
So,
how do we keep track of it?
but to
They
Casey's
have to call
question,
us, and that's how we
if-
keep track.
If they don't tell you, then you wouldn't know.
That is
if-
correct.
tell me if this is correct or if I have it wrong. If the food preparer delivers the food, it is on them.
That's right.
If the people having the event that rent the venue go and pick up the food vendor has no responsibility at all. It's up to the person. It's as if they went into a store and bought stuff and brought it in. It's their own.
Yeah,
And
how
they're
do
not
we-
licensed.
Unless it's open to the public, then we would
Except,
be-
right, except
we-
if it's open to the public. Then same
KG,
for
we don't
private
have to go
events.
there, but you know that.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I just want to make sure that, this only restricts for the Ashland licensees doing business in Ashland.
Yes.
If these people go in there and sell food or set up in Framingham, other towns, we don't care about it. So
Well,
that
we
you need to make
care.
that clear.
We care, but it would be that town
Right,
that
but
would make
It's
the
not our
We can-
decision.
jurisdiction.
Right, but we need to make sure that we clear that up to,
Well, I think you said, oh,
no, it
permitted.
didn't say that. Our licensees,
Oh, I see.
serving in
Say
Ashland.
Ashland,
yes,
say Ashland,
they need to be serving in Ashland. That's when they are restricted.
okay.
They go down and do it in Boston.
Yeah, that's, I understand. And it could be a town without a risk.
Okay, and then, did we want to remove the need for a Board of Health vote and leave it in Mark's hands?
Yeah, I guess so, because that, they cannot wait for a board to assemble to get the permission if they have to do it in 3 days or 4 days, so.
Okay. Judy, was there any, did your concerns get?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna reread the motion.
Amended motion.
I'm going to, well, why don't I just withdraw the previous motion?
Then we have to vote for it, to withdraw,
Okay.
you already took it.
Okay, then I'll amend the motion
Yes,
to read, effective immediately, all permits, licenses, and permissions granted by the Town of Ashland Board of Health that cover activities that take place outdoors in the Town of Ashland have a curfew of dusk, as defined in supporting documentation. This curfew shall remain in effect until the triple E risk level is no longer deemed high or critical by the Mass Department of Public Health and the Town of Ashland Health Agent Director. Do I have a second? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. It passes 4-0.
So, somebody's going to notify all the vendors, I guess, and the clubs.
Yeah, we have actually a list of all our vendors now. Laura's been doing a tremendous amount
I
of
know,
work generating
because I saw an
email
acknowledgement
lists.
from Indira Desai about that.
But it's a good
Yeah.
question though, KG, because when she sends it out, we blind copy all the food vendors, and you wouldn't know, in fact, we talked about this, that you wouldn't know all the food vendors got that information. The reason you wouldn't is we blind copied them all, so that email list is only privy to them and not to everyone else.
Right.
So
Also
it's
saves a
something-
lot of trouble with reply all.
Yes, yes, oh, yes. But they
Okay,
have
should we
to-
move forward? We're gonna bring up Mr. Ed Hart.
So somebody will get this up to date. But it doesn't show the balance, we should have big balances. They will. Thank you. And we should have big balances. Thank you. Where the money
done this when I was sitting here.
Thanks, Ed.
Human collator.
This is, has to do with an idea that Kathy Rooney had talked to me about. I think most of you probably know Kathy.
Absolutely.
She volunteers for a lot of things, and she's a registered pesticide applicant, registered with the state of Massachusetts. And I recently was talking with her over there at the state forest about a problem with invasives, and we got into discussion. She had been working on an idea for a while.
You have one for me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's, the
That's
what
okay,
when,
I'm teasing.
the
Eddie.
what when
No,
is
so-
over here. He's got an extra copy of that.
Okay, we have when and how and where,
Oh,
but
you have an extra,
Ma-
okay,
Mark.
the other two, okay.
Mark, he transferred the knowledge directly Wi-Fi,
he did that, that's correct.
Bluetooth.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, and so she, we were talking about pesticides, and she's an applicator, and was unaware of some of the things we had done in the past. She was aware of it, but she'd been very busy, she wasn't able to take a look at it, wasn't sure if it was online, and we got into discussion. And she has an idea that what is needed in the town is a little bit more information than what I presented 3-4 years ago. Mostly it's about the fact that a lot of people use pesticides incorrectly. Sometimes they use the wrong pesticide, they use it at the wrong time, they do it in the wrong way. Being a professional, she was aware of this and listening to discussions among citizens and sometimes in the town. So we came up with the idea, this actually was my idea, but for the title was the what, when, where, how, and why of pesticides. And the what could be considered the pesticide book that I have in there. The when, the where, and the why is described briefly in that first handout. Basically, it's a very rough outline, but it gives you a rough idea of what we're talking about. She has a number of people who are also in the field that are going to contribute to this. This is a project that we'll do on our own and give it as a gift to the town. And when it's all done, it should take about 6 months. I hope to have it done in the spring. And hopefully, I know, I have a good feeling about this. I think this is going to be a good gift to the town. And we can share it with the Conservation Commission, the Sustainability, the DPW, the Board of Selectmen. And if it turns out as good as I hope it will, we can also share it with surrounding towns. So this should be a comprehensive guide, let's say, to the proper use of pesticides. The why is a little bit more philosophical, and I hope to be able to contribute to that. I think that my contribution to this is going to be limited to some research in chemistry, perhaps, and maybe in wording. She, like I said, she has a couple of other people who are also professionals in this field. And she would have been here today, but she's working up in Gloucester and trying to fight the traffic on 128. She told me she probably wouldn't get here. So I said, that's all right. I'll print out some things. I'll hand it up so that the Board of Health gets the rough idea. And we'll ask for your blessing and give us some time. In about 6 months, hopefully we'll be able to come back and give you a pretty good booklet that should be comprehensive on the, like I said, what type of pesticides to use, when to use them, how to use them, where to use them, where not to use them, when not to use them. And she also, it's going to require a number of photographs too, probably. I have a couple here. She gave me a couple of handouts, and you could pass this around. In order to identify a invasive plant, you really need a picture of the plant.
Right.
You know.
Mhm.
Right.
And I have a long list of the invasives in Massachusetts and in New England. And there's also a number of insects that are pests also. Some of them are invasive. So we'll try to augment, perhaps in the body of the piece or maybe in an index or appendix in the back, pictures like this. And also some brand names. I'm not sure if I want to get into brand names. We might, because there's some that we might cover them all. If we're going to cover one, we'll try to cover them all, to be fair. What they were talking about in Triple E, and Mark was talking about, those are pyrethroids. They come from they're synthetic derivative of pyrethrum, which comes from the chrysanthemum plant.
That's the
And,
one I was
they're
trying
very
to think,
safe.
chrysanthemum.
Yeah, chrysanthemum, yeah. And they're very safe. They're safe, they're not that safe for cats, but the cats have to ingest quite a bit of it. They can't metabolize the pesticide in their liver, but all mammals can. The pyrethroids are very safe. Permethrin is one of them. They're very common and that you buy to, permethrin is the best to keep ticks away. So that's that part of it. Let's see. Yeah, I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. I also had a lot of data that I wanted to run by you folks, a little update on our last meeting. There was a bill before the House, there was two bills actually, it was 791 and 792, and it dealt with mostly glyphosate. Well, that's been combined into a new bill, and I think it's on page, let's see, 5. I got a lot of pages here, sorry. It's near the back. Probably the third to the last page.
Inga
Yeah,
would be
new
very
legislation.
upset with you that you're not using a page.
I know, I should have numbered them. It's Senate Bill 447 and House Bill 776. And the gist of it is that towns may, by a majority vote of the legislative body and approval of the municipality's Board of Health, adopt ordinances and bylaws that regulate, restrict, and prohibit the use and application or disposal of pesticides within the city or town that are more stringent than the standards and restrictions established by the chapter. That's a very important piece of legislation, because this gives the towns the right to be tougher than the state or the EPA, if you choose. And we've done this in the past with class 1 and 2 pesticides. We were never challenged, but it's logical. And there's been a lot of push in a lot of towns for this type of legislation. So that's the update, and I don't know where this is in committee. I think this is coming up, I hope this comes up before the general report this fall. I haven't, to tell you the truth, I haven't followed it for over a week, so it hasn't come up yet.
The one thing I would just like to add, as you were talking, you mentioned glyphosate for the people
Oh, Roundup.
watching at home. Roundup,
Yep.
it's the common ingredient, it's the main ingredient, and Roundup is the most common product. There
Right.
are other products that use glyphosate.
Right, yep. Yeah, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. Roundup also contains some other so-called inert ingredients and surfactants, which may also have a problem associated with them. They're not tested. The EPA doesn't require testing on those. But there is a list that is, that's what, I think it was House 792, talked about the additives to these pesticides too. They come from a list of chemicals that have been tested as being safe. And those two bills are still before the House. Now, there is 2 new ticks moving north. One is the Asian longhorn tick, and that carries a disease in Asia, not in the United States so far, but it's moved up in the past 10 years. It's in, I think, 9 states, and you'll see on the first page, I've listed the states where it's found in Connecticut. It carries a thrombocytopenia syndrome virus triggering human hemorrhagic fever, is responsible for killing 15% of those that receive a bite from this tick in Asia. Who knows where it came from? Well, obviously it came from Asia, but it came in maybe 10, 15 years ago. The bad thing about this tick is it can lay up to 2,000 eggs. Doesn't require a male in order to mate with. They found deer in, I think, Tennessee that had died because they had tens of thousands of these ticks on the deer, and it sucked so much blood out of the animal it just passed out and died. And there is a threat to livestock if this gets going. Like I said, the dangerous thing about this tick is that it lays so many eggs. And there's another tick also. On the next one, there's a study that you'll see where ticks carry sometimes multiple diseases. So you get bitten by a, say, deer tick that gives you Lyme disease. It may also give you another disease, 2 or 3 diseases. And doctors are becoming more conscious of this when they treat patients from tick bites. There are 8 ticks that are common in New England. The deer tick, the black-legged tick, the groundhog tick, the Asian longhorn tick, the Lone Star tick, the dog tick, the Rocky Mountain wood tick, and the Pacific Coast tick. Now, obviously, the Rocky Mountain and the Pacific Coast aren't found on the East Coast, but those others have been found. And with global warming, these ticks are expanding their range. And so that's something to be thinking about in the future. It's very important for people when they're out in the woods to be checking with yourselves all the time. It's not just the deer tick. And another thing I want to run by you is there's about rodenticides. I encourage people not to use rodenticides. I think it's the white-footed mouse is the main vector for the deer tick and Lyme disease. It's not the deer. And people sometimes think, well, then maybe we should kill the mice, and maybe that's a good idea. I'm not saying that isn't a good idea, but it's the method that you use to get rid of the mice that is a problem. People are using too many rodenticides, And rodenticides are anticoagulants. And what happens is that they, any small mammal, like a mouse or a chipmunk or a squirrel that eats this, doesn't die immediately. There'll be internal bleeding. It could be cerebral hemorrhages, it could be abdominal hemorrhages, but the animal is weakened and it may be out in the wild and flopping around, making a lot of, giving a lot of attention to predators. And typically the predator that is most damaged are the raptors, and the hawks and the owls. And an average raptor eats an awful lot of mice. And before we overdeveloped suburbia, each raptor would have its own range, and they kept the mouse population in check. This wasn't a problem. Now that we've gone and destroyed habitats and built houses on them, it's like mouseville, and raptors are not invited anymore. They've lost a lot of their territory, and those that are around do get subject to rodenticides. The best way to get rid of a mouse problem is with the old-fashioned spring trap. That's where you're certain of it. A lot of people don't like to see a dead body, but I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat, so it's not that much different. A dead mouse or a dead chicken or a dead cow is still a dead animal. So to be responsible, you should think about the bigger impact that some of these pesticides have in nature, in the balance of nature. And I'm against, and a number of other people too are against rodenticides. There's a movement that's growing all the time, especially in Connecticut, I think, talking about outlawing them, banning their sale. And just for that main reason, because it's so damaging to the raptors, and that is a kind of a domino effect in nature. Okay, now we're into the insect apocalypse, and it's strange that I am here as the pesticide expert, and I'm in favor of insects. I like insects. They're fascinating animals. They're incredible animals. And there are some that we have to keep track of, like mosquitoes and ticks, and of course carpenter ants and termites, because they can harm your home. But the other insects are essential. And when they sprayed for mosquitoes, they killed every living flying thing. They didn't just kill the mosquitoes, they killed everything. The lepidopterans, the dipterans, all the wild bees, all the butterflies, the moths, everything are affected by this. It also affects birds, and they've done some studies in Europe, the Netherlands and in Canada. And they've noticed the bird populations depleted. They've gone down 40% in some places, and it's because the birds are also affected by these pesticides. They're eating insects that aren't dead yet. They've been, the neonics specifically, they've been weakened by it. And the birds, a lot of these pesticides don't affect mammals the same way that they affect insects, because the neonics, for example, they're a neurotoxin, and they can cross the blood-brain barrier in an insect, but they can't cross the blood-brain barrier in a mammal or a bird. But as the mammal metabolizes some of these neonics, it turns into a chemical that does cause harm, that can cross that barrier and cause other systemic problems. So the neonic pesticides are, we've talked about it, it's in the news all the time. There recently, this administration decided not to bring a halt to them. And they are in a lot of the plants that you buy, like at Home Depot or at Lowe's, that's in the soil. They live for about 1,000. This pesticide lasts for about 1,000 days. It degrades in 34 days if it's in sunlight, but if it's out of the sun, then it can last up to 3 years or a little longer. And it also is water soluble, so it can get into groundwater supplies and affect marine invertebrates. So when you buy something at the store, most likely the soil has been treated with this imidacloprid, is the most common one. I think it's the most commonly used pesticide on earth, and it's a neonic. And it's systemic, so it gets into the plant, and the leaves, the stems, the roots, the pollen, the nectar of that plant, all can be contaminated, will carry this pesticide. So the bees and the wild bees, others come and they feed on the pollen, and they gradually get exposed to the pesticide. They get weakened. Like I said, it's a it's a neurotoxin. It has a neuro effect. It weakens them. It causes excitability at first, and in larger doses, it's just paralysis and death. So that's just another thing that people should keep in mind when they purchase plants and buy seeds. You know, if you can buy organic, you're probably doing nature a favor. Like I said, I have a lot of other things. I could talk to you guys all night about some of this stuff. I'm speeding through it. But I just wanted to let you know that they're mainly the thing about ticks, the mosquitoes, the rodenticides, the overuse of pesticides, and the fact that we're going to be working on a more comprehensive booklet probably, to present to the Board of Health in the near future, that'll explain all of this and try to limit the use of these chemicals. They're essential at times, but they're overused. An awful lot of people hire lawn specialists, and they often come in and they'll spray the backyards, and they do it on a regular basis. We had a discussion about that in the town when it came to grubs. There's 2 times a year when it's effective, the rest of the time you're just wasting your money, and you're killing other things, so there's no point to it. Mosquitoes, the average mosquito has I think their life cycle is 10 days. It goes from egg to larva to pupa to adult in 10 days approximately. It goes from pupa to adult in 2 to 3 days. The male lives about 10 days, and the female lives between 45 and 60 days. So when you spray, you're killing all the ones that are alive, but in a couple of days, they can metamorphose from pupa into adult stage. Your idea about putting a fan is a good one, because they are attracted by CO2 and by body heat. So, I mean, you'll be pushing the CO2 out, but they can't fly very well. They can't fly against a good breeze, and they won't want to. And they're opportunists also. You know, the females are the only ones that bite, and they don't like the sunlight. They dry out too fast. So if you're in the sun, you're safe. If you're close to if you're like 10 feet away from a shady area, then you could be subject to a bite. But if you're out in the middle of a field in the sun, there's very little chance you're gonna get bitten by a mosquito. Yeah, they just won't be out there. So like I said, I could talk for hours, but I won't. Any
Ed,
questions?
is there anything that we can do as a board to help you in this project?
You know, so far, no, I don't think so. And I might ask you to do some printing for
Okay.
us, when we're done. I know I borrowed the printer to print up one of the handouts that you folks had, because I ran out of ink.
Mhm.
I made copies for you guys. But, no, I think that we're going to, and it's gonna be very, relaxed and informal, our meetings.
Mhm.
I know that
Simple
Kathy.
terms.
Yeah, it's very simple, yeah, because that way we'll get more done faster. A lot of these people are working and the time schedules are off. We may be able to meet with 2 or 3. We won't be forming any committee or working group because we may not have a quorum. It might just be 2 people. And there's no need to anyway, because it's a gift, you know, we're
Mhm.
not asking for any money. And basically, I just wanted to let you, give you a heads up that this is an exciting development, because these people are professionals in their field. They really know what they're talking about. And we've had discussions like this before, you know.
Pretty great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. And feel free to look. It's just kind of like, there's a lot of little tidbits of information in what I handed you, you know.
In
It's
fact,
sometimes fun to browse.
As an
Sure.
extension to this, I just wanted to bring it up, that, you know, I was there last month in one of the Conservation Commission meeting.
Mhm.
People who live around the Washacom pond, they're complaining about that pond is smelling bad, and then there are lots of weeds and things like that.
I was gonna,
It's associated with the excess use of pesticides and fertilizers,
well, KG,
Upland.
I'm glad you said that, because you talked to me a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
months ago, and I did some research on it. There's one other thing. I talked to Kathy about this too. It's actually 3 things that are involved in that. One is the overuse of fertilizers and the runoff from the fields and the storm drains that drain into Lake Washacom. But in researching, I found out that in the New England states, and this started off, I think, in the University of New Hampshire study. I look for the study. I read so many things and I save everything, but I'm not very organized, and I couldn't find it for this meeting. But there was a third element, and that is that the lakes in the Northeast aren't freezing over like they used to be. So these weeds are undergoing photosynthesis year-round. And that's why in the past 10 or 15 years, this problem has almost gotten out of control. It always was a problem, but it's really it's accelerated, mostly because these ponds aren't freezing over all year round for months at a time and covered with snow and shading out the weeds.
yes, less oxygen and more
Yeah,
phosphorus, that's
yeah.
why they're
Oh,
growing.
and that's
there.
another thing too, yeah,
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 yeah.
right. Yeah.
So we have taken under conservation some measures, if anybody who's in the neighborhood, to avoid putting fertilizers and then snow melting, things like that, we are putting some restrictions on.
Yeah, there's something you can
To
do
help
something
that
about, right,
Pond to get back to its original state, so
Mhm.
we should be aware of it.
yeah.
And then excess use of fertilizer is very bad, because it's going to affect the groundwater, so we need to take
Yeah.
some
Sure.
kind of action someday or the other, so we need to start thinking about it,
Mhm,
so.
mhm.
The only thing you think of is that when the project is done, you might want to touch base with Paula Benetti at the library. She might have some ideas
Oh.
on how to disseminate that information to the rest of the
Oh, good
town and
idea.
share it.
Good
You
idea,
know,
yeah,
we
yeah,
could probably get a couple copies bound
yeah, get it
and
and
maybe
share it with other
put it in
towns.
the library and
Yeah.
then put it into the Minuteman system maybe,
Yep,
and
okay,
share it with the.
okay, that's a good idea.
Minuteman
Okay,
community.
thanks, yeah, I'll make a note of that. We haven't had our first meeting yet, like I said, Kathy's really busy. Once the cold weather comes, then everybody will have more time, you know, it's a busy time of year for us all.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Okay, well,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
A lot of
See you
work.
later.
What I'll do, Ed, you weren't on the board, but KG had sent us something last November I drew up the email, so I'll send it to you and send it back to the board. It was on Raptors and
Oh,
the
okay.
concerns.
I already gave him the contact.
Yeah, and I've
gentleman,
been
yeah.
talking to him,
Right,
Eisner, yeah,
right. And
yeah.
this was a topic in one of those yearly conferences that we go to.
Yeah.
MHAB.
It's a serious problem.
It
It's a
is,
very
it
serious
is.
problem.
Yeah, I think several cities have joined in,
Yeah,
signed
yeah.
off. that we need
People are
to do
becoming
that.
more aware of it.
Right.
But you have a copy of it now if
Okay.
you wanna see it
He's in
again.
email touch with them. I think he's getting all the.
Yeah, I do, I'm on their,
Yeah.
uh,
They
their
had some
list.
legislation on
might
it
have.
too, I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw
they made a
that.
presentation recently, and
Yeah.
it was met with,
Very important
yeah,
to
it
know.
is, it is, yeah.
I tell people, use the spring traps as well,
Yeah.
if they're looking at that.
People are becoming more aware of the balance of nature. It's very easy to knock it out of balance, it's very difficult to get it back in balance, and it's essential. Insects are essential. If we lost all the insects today, then we'd all be dead in about 2 or 3 months. Every third bite of food comes from a pollinator.
I have not used pesticide and I lost all my Asian pears.
So I think what Ed just said is you gotta finish your
Oh,
meals in 2
three
bites
of
or
them.
less.
Yeah.
I said, I'll go and
They did, really? Okay.
No, it was good,
Oh.
but I said, I'll go and then take it tomorrow, but next day morning I see there's none.
Oh.
Squirrels probably ate
Yeah,
it, who
squirrels,
knows, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you
Thanks,
very
Ed.
much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the fee schedule review.
Wondered of that.
Which I didn't have a chance to draft it, I know you would wanted that, but I haven't had
They
a
must have
chance
had a
to-
feast.
So
Looks like you've been busy.
At a
Yeah.
party probably.
You and Mark,
Invited
so-
everybody in the
Right.
neighborhood.
Really understand that.
perhaps it would make more sense to move this off to another meeting, maybe the 15th.
You wanted to take a look at.
I mean, we could take a look, I think one of the things that when we were looking at it at the last meeting in comparison with other things, that the general consensus was that we probably don't need to take any action on the fees.
That's-
What might be a prudent idea is, since it was listed as last revised January 1st, 2016, we might want to rebrand it, saying that it was reviewed and with a current date, and put the current board members on it.
Yeah, and there's one in red in there about
Mhm.
people getting confused with what a repair septic system is, so
Okay.
we put a replacement.
Okay.
So why don't we table this until the October 15th meeting?
Let's see, but it's there.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll change some of
And
those.
maybe Laura, at that meeting, if we can just
Yeah.
have a copy that says reviewed with the current date, and on the last page, the current board members,
Yes.
and then we can sign off on it, so that moving forward, when it's reviewed by this board, whoever is on it, they can at least see that it was reviewed
right.
at a
Then
more
if-
recent
if-
date.
If we have to add any other services for which we have to pay, get a fee, we need to do that at
Sure.
this time, so we need to look
Mhm.
into it. Okay.
Cool?
Yeah, we were just saying, there are some smaller things, like, when you look at the first set of fees, it's new or renovations.
Okay.
The base should be $570 to start where we left off at 99 seats, then $1.26
I got you.
per
Okay.
seat, so
So,
that
yeah,
should be.
so make those modifications for the next time, and we'll review it
Question mark.
and approve them
You-
together.
I know that they had a diesel issue today.
Yes,
You had to go there to see that.
I went up to
There's no
see it.
fee or anything charged for anybody, right?
well, the DEP called me to tell
Yeah,
me
yeah,
there
but
was a
you are
study.
going there, your service is
Yeah, I
provided to.
can't charge per se, cause DEP's handling it. I'm more or less taking in data in case any questions come up, but in a situation like that, I understand we should have a fee for everything we do, but we can't always in
Quantify
emergency
it.
situations, but it's a good point. I spent some time up there, took pictures, met the various officials
I did go
involved with
there
it,
too.
so.
I took a look at it where it is,
Yeah.
what it is, okay.
Good.
That's when she said that, oh, we already had somebody from Board of Health, I said, that must be Mark.
All right, next on the agenda is discussing the dangers of vaping, and I'm assuming, Mark, that you might have something to say about it briefly, because you have some
Yeah, I
articles in
will.
here, but
Sure,
before
I
you do,
can-
one of the things that
good
I
information.
wanted to mention is, I wanted to just say that I'm really proud of the work that we've done in advance. You know, when we were working on this last year, at the end of last year, before and during the public forum, we had lawyers come and try and use scare tactics, and we didn't allow that to overtake what our mission was, to protect safety. And we can see that we were ahead of the curve on that. And so
In fact, I was driving down from my home to here.
Mhm.
I just heard that the New York banned all the flavored vaping devices.
So, yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
I've been sifting through a lot of the materials coming out now, and I think that should the federal government and/or
They
some of the
probably are
states
going
take
to.
some action,
CDC is working on it.
if the states don't take some action, then I'm gonna suggest in the new year, once we get to the new year, that we as a board probably take some
Yep.
additional action.
They had another death today in California, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy. Meanwhile, I'm on campus, taking a walk at lunchtime around campus, and these kids, there was one kid vaping from 2 different vape pens at the same
Ooh.
time. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, are you oblivious to the news? I mean,
Death is knocking on the door.
it's, yeah.
And it's getting more rapid because, you know, when you smoke it probably takes ages to go through that phase and then
Yeah.
it's a slow death. Here it's rapid. Kids are dying at small ages and then, it's awful, it's awful.
Any thoughts from your seat, Mark?
I think you said it all. We were, you know, just moving forward with what we thought was a public health initiative and went forward and did it. You know, I think it's important. I'm glad we were ahead of the curve of some actions that sometimes take longer at state or federal level. It's just always been, seems to be the norm that the initiatives start at the grassroots, the local level. And thank you, KG. You've been, well, all of you, but I know KG, anytime you find an article, you send it to
Yeah.
us
Oh,
right
yeah.
away.
Yeah.
He's our curator.
Yes,
All right, Mark,
okay.
let's talk numbers.
So the budget. Budget has not been updated to carry over last year's numbers, so you still see when it comes to the revolving funds, they have not been, the funds that were left as of June 30th need to be carried over into this fiscal year. And sometimes those things take time. I don't know if they're, I could ask the accountant to come to a board meeting, or I can ask her when, because it'd be nice to have that updated to see, you know, the carryover. And then the other side of the budget is in good order. So we should be at basically, and as I say, I always look at permanent 21.3, we're at 19%, but there will be other costs coming about as we move along. And when you look in the budget, it gives me a chance to bring up what was brought up before. There are training and dues and membership fees here, and I want the board to know, please consider the Mass Association of Health Boards meeting. It happens November, usually in Taunton and in Marlboro.
Right.
If you want to go to that conference, they have an excellent venue for new members, as well as they have other tracks for existing members who may have taken the new membership at 1 year. So if you're interested, let us know, sign up, give us the note, we'll send the money to
It's only on,
Mass
it's
Association of
usually on
Health.
a weekend anyway.
Yeah, and it's on Saturdays, thank you,
Saturday,
KG.
Yeah.
It's good to go. Incidentally, I thought we were going to use this information for future budget and then increasing the number of staff. That's what we're planning to do it. So if that data can be obtained for the food inspection report. of
talked to
July,
Tom, yeah.
last July and this July, I think every year we are supposed to submit
They,
it. but
well, they're not
They
requiring
didn't send you the
anymore.
form, but what I'm suggesting is take the old form, white it out and put the data so that we have a consistent data information that we can use and
Sure.
analyze it be better. It's easier, it's a one pager, so
Yeah,
Tom or somebody
yeah,
can help you.
Tom and I spoke last Thursday about it.
Okay.
I sent him an email Wednesday saying, you know, let's chat about this when we see each
I
other.
think you have one for 3 years ago,
Yeah,
so take
and
that sheet.
They modified it a little bit. 1 year they were looking at, they wanted to know how many schools were being inspected and how often. Another year they were looking at repetitive violations. So this, it depended on what the state was looking for at that time period. And I have a feeling they will come back with that forms
I
someday.
think you have one for the 2017 that you sent it in September of
I
2017,
believe
if I
we
remember
did.
right.
It's on the
So if
calendar
you
year.
can take that form, white out
Just
the
use two
numbers.
Yeah, it's just a
fill-
matter of getting
fill
the
what it-
numbers.
Yeah,
It's
that-
been busy,
yeah.
but
that-
we will put that
I
together.
thought your system would generate the numbers like
Well,
that.
it does, but it doesn't include
Oh,
all
did they?
my reviews and
Win-win.
so forth.
Win-win, win-win, what a win-win.
WinWham does a fairly good job, but
Yeah.
it's a calendar year too, it's not a fiscal year.
If you can get that data, that would be wonderful.
That would be calendar year. If you said 2017, it'd be right about now, 2018, last
And
year.
2019, because July is over.
Calendar year.
No, it was soon, was it calendar year?
It's calendar year.
Then you have to give 2017.
They always
2018.
ask for it in July to give you time because they know you're busy and so it's calendar years. So we'll do the
think
2018
2 previous
calendar.
years we need.
So if 17 was the last, 18 will be the next. Because we couldn't do all of
No,
19
no, I
right
think
now.
you did the 16.
Okay, if 16 was the last, we'll have
16
to,
was last, I think.
Oh, okay.
17 and 18 we need. yeah.
we'll look into it for you.
Yeah.
But I don't want to guarantee next meeting. We've all been busy here, but
Whenever-
First- the
whenever
first
you
hard
just send it by
frost.
email, that's more than enough.
We're going back to the frost.
It doesn't have
when
to
the
be
first
meeting-
hard frost hits, you have some
No,
time.
it's a one,
Right.
it's one page, so whenever you finish it,
Yeah,
send it.
that's fine.
I'm sure the mosquito will come back again later.
Please.
They need to go out now.
Tobacco control agent position, if I can.
Go for it.
What's interesting is our tobacco control agent was, he sent a letter of, a form of resignation, but was suggesting who should be our tobacco control agent. Well, he's been thinking twice now about leaving the position, so I talked to our human resource officer. I told him, it was Monday, he called me. He says, I'm kinda needing some work, and I really don't wanna resign. I said, well, we never made it official, we haven't started the interviews, and I'll talk to human resources. So we're waiting for him to rescind his resignation by him putting something in writing. So Elliot may be back on track with us, and I think all of us have met Elliot.
Sure.
So, and he knows the town, it will be so much easier if he decides to come back. But again, we gotta follow process. And then if that's the case, we'll take off the request to looking for someone new. And we're finding some great applications, but they're qualified to be a health agent more than a tobacco control. They don't have any experience in doing tobacco control inspections, but they have their masters in public health in most cases. And there's a lot of people out there with masters in public health that would qualify as a great health agent. The Narcan grant, I actually sent a reminder to Kelly Joseph, she's the fiscal agent for the Narcan grant. And I spoke with Jennifer Ball, Assistant Town Manager, because she wants to just make sure the training's in-house. And I did tell her the past grant, it was both in-house and Kelly Joseph, who works for the whole region. She prefers it in-house. I told her Ed Berman was fantastic. He's a sergeant on the police force. He's also a nurse, and he did a lot of trainings for us, as well as Nancy did on individuals that came in. So, but I assured Jen that would continue that way. But once in a while, Kelly Joseph came in, and she came in, I think, twice to go over the training with decisions at every turn. And then we had a human resource offering through our human resource department, which was offered by Ed Berman. So it was a variety of people. So, but we're hoping that grant will come through. I have a request in to see what the status is to Kelly Joseph, of who runs the this regional grant.
Did you talk to Ed Berman about getting some statistics on the
I think
use
we-
of Narcan?
I think we might have, but again, we can find out where he is with that, because we could invite him to a meeting too.
Could we, or
Yeah.
could you ask him to keep updating us as and when he
Yeah,
finds it, that way it's easier that we can keep track of it rather than.
and if it's okay, it may
Every
be
time he comes
appropriate
to
to
a meeting,
invite
he
him
has to
to.
get away from other jobs, so.
Yeah, but he may want to explain it, because it's sensitive information,
And if he
it's.
wants to, I would see, it looks like there's plenty of time on the 15th meeting.
Okay. October 15th.
Or he can filter out all the personal information and give us the data, that's more than enough, 'cause that's what we've been.
No, understandable, but when it's just, we'll see what he wants. I'll leave it up to him, because it's sensitive information. You're dealing with, statistics to some degree, but it's right here at home, so, in Ashland.
We gotta know how it
Yeah,
works.
hopefully it's good news, because
Yeah,
the
good.
rates are coming down slowly in the whole state, so
Right,
hopefully
but
it's
if-
good news.
If you have a program and then it's working good and then
Yeah.
reducing the number of cases,
Yeah.
that's when we're happy that we're administering the stuff properly.
I
So we
agree.
need to know those things. So that's critical.
Okay.
I think last time he sent those information by email itself.
Yeah,
So I don't foresee an issue.
Maybe he did. We can ask how he
He
wants to
did.
do it.
He did, I remember that.
That's fine. So you all have your bright posters. still posted. Unfortunately, as we heard from Ed's presentation, we have global warming. Can't disregard the fact that it's been warm. And the cyanobacteria down at the upper reservoir, at the Hopkinton Reservoir, Hopkinton State Park, is actually mostly in ashland. That cyanobacteria color was dissipating, so they started 3 weeks ago now testing it. And if it came out negative for cyanobacteria, they would test the following week. They tested the first week, no problem. Second week, the color came back. So it removed the program and just said, these are posted until that color goes away, then we'll start testing it again. So it could be, I hate to say the first hard frost again, but once the weather gets cold, it may just dissipate and they may not test it and the signs will come down. But the signs will remain until they can assure us it's completely.
Are these at Ashland State Park and Hopkinton State Park?
These are at the Ashland, you had me say it too, no, these are in the Hopkinton State Park, upper reservoir only.
Okay.
Lower reservoir, they were swimming in there when I went down, when it was first noted to us. It's only in that upper reservoir is this posted at, because that's the only reservoir of concern at this point. And then I've been working with our stormwater management group, which is Megan from Conservation and Evan from the DPW. They work on stormwater management. And Charlotte, not Charlotte, Cheryl Wojciechowski, who works with them as well. And they found an EPA document, which I like, it's very colorful, but at the same time, we implemented some of the state laws, because the federal laws are a little different from what we call Title V state septic system regulations, and included the town seal and modified it to some degree. They're gonna make some nice hard copies of these, and we'll be handing them out at times when people come in, possibly in mailings, and you know, it could be part of a billing that gets sent out, because most people there's only a few people that have wells and septic, and we could do those separately, but get these out to people, and,
Yeah, if you're going to be in Ashland, they booth,
yeah, Steve was
That'll be on the
and the
Actually, if
farmer's
you can make
market
me
is
some
another
for Ashland,
venue
I'll
to
give
take
you-
care of if you.
That's a perfect idea. You led me to what I was gonna ask to announce, I talked to Chris about this, but Ashland Day. The Board of Health will have a booth at Ashland Day. I ordered, did you order some too, KG?
No, I did not.
Okay, I ordered some bags.
Well,
Remember one year you and I both ordered the same bags? They're the,
I thought they exhausted the stock.
no, they got them back, so they're through the clearinghouse, they're bags, they're like tote bags, and they preparedness bags, just to say, be prepared for emergencies, and then you can put stuff in there. The Medical Reserve Corps information will be at the booth. You're all welcome to be there. Ron, I know you've been down there.
I just thought they should make that
And
their
you have to.
backpack. It's much easier because when they carry like that, nobody sees the preparedness bag.
So,
If it's on the back,
Yeah.
everybody will read it.
okay. So we'll set it up. You're in charge of setting up the booth.
I'm not here in town
Okay.
on that day.
Oh, well. But you're all welcome to be there. Mike Gurnick, our Medical Reserve Corps Chair, will be there. And Green Up asked for some space because they don't have their own booth. So Green Up Ashland / Adopt a Street Ashland for cleaning will be sharing the booth with us.
That's
And we'll
nice.
be handing out some triple-E information, information on this brochure prevention, what is ticks, you know, we have these brochures as well. We'll try to get as much colorful brochures out there so people are attracted to them.
On the ticks, if you're giving anything, the clearinghouse has some small
Yes,
documentation that you
yeah.
can get those.
Yeah,
from
we
them.
have them, I believe, in the back too, but
Okay.
thank you, KG. And so I hope to see you all Saturday. Look forward to it. And I went over triple E. I think everyone's seen the situation. Laura's been putting a lot of time into the situational awareness to get it properly posted on the
You'll all be
website.
experts by the end of it.
And you'll see this map, and again, these risk levels will not go down until the first hot frost.
Just a question or concern. I went to the DAET open house, and there were it wasn't a criticism of the board, but it was more about, you know, maybe allaying public fears with response to the time frame and how information is disseminated from us to the public regarding potential threats. You know, so, you know, I had the question posed to me, is there, you know, basically a formal process by how this gets disseminated? Because we're all in the loop, because we get the 5,000 emails from you and the DPH, but then how is the rest of the public?
Sure.
So some
It's a
people
fair
were-
question.
No, some people were just, they knew that we were doing something, but they felt like if there was information put out wherever it is, on the website or on social media or any combination of things, says we're aware of the situation, we're working on it, even if that's all there is in the beginning, just so people know we're not ignoring the threat, you know, that they're taking steps. So I don't know if, as a board, or you can tell me what tell us
Sure.
what the process is, and then if we feel like we wanna
Well,
revisit that,
we're learning as we go.
Okay.
Because we didn't have triple E like this ever before.
yeah?
And then we had cyanobacteria just to add on to it. So both I'll separate to some degree. We have set up, so we sent out a weekly situational awareness report on Monday, and that's when the times change too. And any new updates on, say, where they sprayed. And as it relates to cyanobacteria, we can only go as fast as the state wishes, so that's why we can't update at this point. They're just staying in the same level. But what we noticed, I noticed, and I think Laura noticed too, is social media is in demand of information split second, which cannot always be derived from the state split second. So, but we have been very grateful to people like Karen Dan, who is on the Green Up Committee, who has a page, the Ashland some page, and she'll bring in that information right from our webpage. And Beth Reynolds is handling our social media here, right, a point over there, because that's where her office is, for our economic development coordinator. So we're trying to interact with this, especially social media. It's more of the drop place to put this information than even the local newspapers lately. It used to be the local newspapers, the radio station, cable, we still interact with them, but more
Town
cable
crier.
and social media, because the demand is there, and we don't want, one, to have rumors on social media, we
Yeah.
want factual.
Yep.
And two, because sometimes that'll cause false panic,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want false panic, because there's no need to panic. It's about caution, and making sure people are paying attention to the caution signs we're putting up, not to panic them. But again, you know, it can happen. We're trying to get better at social media, you know, and so forth. And Code Red, reverse 911. And even Tom, our food inspector's on Twitter. I noticed he posted some of the mosquito information on his Twitter page, so
So
we're trying to do it that
I
way.
think it's great that word is getting out there. I think the problem with it is it's very scattered. So Tom can post stuff on his Twitter page,
Yeah.
but only people that follow Tom will see it.
Okay,
So, and that's a problem.
yeah. Do we have a town Twitter? I think we do. We'd
So-
tweet whatever.
That would be
I think
one
Beth-
place to do
I
it.
think Beth did it there, I think. We can ask.
So
Town
why
website. Go
why
ahead.
can
don't we
ask her.
talk about a process, you know? Because, you know, we're saying things like, this has never happened before to this level.
Yeah.
There are going to be other times in the community where we're gonna have to really act quickly and act really well and communicate really well, and that should be our priority. I think, what we're doing now, is great. We're developing the databases for the restaurants, we're, you know, doing a lot of things that, frankly, I was surprised we hadn't done before. But there's so many things that are happening these days, and like you said, Mark, we need to know right away. The plane went over my house 3 times the other night.
I heard it too.
3
Yeah.
times. I never got a reverse 911 call. Now, I knew from the emails that it was going to be during this period of time, but there was no, like the past one, I think, you know, if you program citizens to understand that we're going to give you a reverse 911, and then we're gonna tell you it's gonna be within this week period, weather dependent, they're gonna expect it.
Yeah.
But I knew it from our emails, but I didn't see it anywhere. I think we should utilize absolutely
yeah.
everything, but you can have an email distribution list of like Sue Petroni, who does a great job of reporting the news, and, you know, other outlets within Ashland, we have a discussion board and those kinds of things. But also, you know, it warranted, I think, if planes were flying and windows were open, another reverse 911.
You know,
Well, we did discuss that, just so the board knows. It went out Monday of the week before, and it did say it's unknown, it's maybe the next 5 to 6 days. We did ask management about sending another one out, because we knew they were out Sunday night, Monday, and the decision was not to, because there's another problem with overuse of reverse 911.
Right.
And the other point, I just want, that caution sign needs to go up. Anvil 10+10, even if your windows are open, will not affect you. That's come from the state, so I want to make that clear as well.
Well,
So I think one of the things that we
I
uncovered.
want to make that choice myself.
Well, you can make that choice, but again,
Yeah.
it's a
So I
product
just,
that's
you
been
know,
tested for
while
20 years.
we're-
Exposure's
while we're
not a problem.
Figuring this out, I mean, you know, it's a crazy world that we
No,
live in.
I agree.
And triple E, in the grand scheme of what has happened in the world, is sort of small scale. And my concern is, you know, we have something major happen and we're not prepared and we can't react quickly. So let's learn a lot from this. Let's, you know, really
Yeah.
dive down into all of the data and know contact lists.
At the
I think
meeting
it's
we
really
had,
important.
at the meeting we had on August 28th downstairs, one of the
Yes.
questions they asked Michael is if we had a communications coordinator in town, and I think
Right.
that not having one, he said we don't, and I think it's becoming painstakingly obvious as that's a position that the town probably needs to
Right.
consider
It would
if
be
even
nice. It
part-time.
would be nice. I wonder if, even to share one with the schools, I don't know if the school has some
Yeah.
or not, but it'd be nice.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we should certainly advocate that from our perspective and, you know, try and get the other boards and commissions on board with that and see if that, we can move that ahead. But going back to the communications now, I get the stuff that gets sent out, the situational awarenesses, who else gets those?
That's where I was talking about the blind copy.
So does the town, does anyone, the
It
residents
goes-
get that?
It goes to
Okay.
Beth to get out to social media.
Okay,
And we have 80 people, 80 restaurants, school,
okay.
management, the board, obviously.
So there's like schools, there's nursing homes and
Yes, there
assisted
are.
living
Yep.
places, there's
Yep,
rooming
yes.
house, you know.
We're sorry, you wouldn't know it
Whatever
because
we
it's, because it's all blind
oversee.
copied, and they're on
Yeah.
there, all the ones you
And
just
no,
mentioned
that's
are on
fine,
there.
I mean, if you say it
But-
happens, it happens.
But we had this discussion because we got an email from one of you and we said, they don't realize we're blind copying.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned it earlier, we
Yeah.
are blind, it's 80 plus, and we'll keep adding, you know, it's, so, but that goes out as, maybe we should have told you, there's a lot of blind copies in here.
No, I understand that.
That's fine.
That's, yeah, that's the best way.
Visually,
Yeah.
you're trying to protect their
Visually
email ID,
Thank you,
that's it,
yes.
so it doesn't matter.
We get in more trouble.
You know, I would even, you know, there's several, there's the Lanterns, Cookingham Green, another one on Olive Street, there's over 55
55
communities with
communities, yeah.
elderly people, there's the, you know, the elderly housing here, there's, you know, so those are high-risk groups, so I
And
think
those
we-
organizations usually do have communications
Yes,
coordinators.
yes, we do, yeah.
So we just need to get their contact and get them
Right.
on this list. That's
Right.
excellent, I just wrote it down to.
Right,
Plus, each of these apartment complexes, they have their own association, their own emails.
like I think
If
Sierra
they,
should be on it.
if you have somebody to get you from their
Yeah.
trustees or boards or whatever that they
Right.
have, give them, ask them to give their
Yeah.
one email ID so they
Those are
can just
good.
pass it all and add it up, so
Yeah.
that the whole town knows.
They're all being written down, we're gonna add them.
Yeah, if
We'll
they-
call
if-
and
if
find out who their
People get information
contact
from two
is.
sites, it's fine, but they have it,
Yeah.
that's important.
Mark, and how does stuff get, on local cable access? Like how, if we had something we wanted to get on there, is that?
They'll call me if they wanna do a show, like, they wanted to do a show on the cyanobacteria, but we weren't ready yet to indicate if it was needed, if more testing was needed or not, because the person at the state was on vacation. So I ended up calling the state person to find out the status, and then I referred it back to the associate at WACA-TV, and so he's thinking of doing the show maybe beginning of October. Hopefully he'll be gone by then, he can give good news, but that's how it works more or less, is we communicate, they're on that list, and we communicate with them when they wish to do a show. I asked to do a show, and I do ask management, because they're the official public information officers, so if I get permission, I'll be more than glad to do any kind of cable news item or show, as well as, same with media. Media has to go all through our PIO. So we do have some process in place for some items,
But even if
especially
it's not
public
a show,
information.
even if it's just, you know, a
clip.
screen with, you know, with an ad, you know, go to, kind of like we have
Yeah,
down
You
in
do
front of
that. I
the
can ask
police
for that.
station,
Yeah,
right? Like, you know, just, you know, triple E threat, please go see, you know, mass,
Yeah.
you know, DPH.
yeah, or even our website.
Yeah, or our website,
Yeah.
right?
On cable, we can get that
I
going.
mean-
It's just been kinda like one update after another, they're on the list, we hope they
Yeah.
grab it, but a graphic would be nice.
Yeah,
For cable,
Yeah, graphic,
yeah.
that's what.
While we're talking about this, I was speaking earlier about a restaurant that told me that they had to pull their tables in because they couldn't eat outside anymore, and they thought it was all day. And I said, no, it's from dusk on. So I don't know if we should send it out, because people misinterpret it, I think, that they can't have outdoor seating at all, and it's nice
probably-
out
it's
this
probably a
week,
good idea
and,
to,
you know, people might
Can
wanna
send
sit
another
outside
notice
in the
so you
sun
can
and
get that
enjoy
out.
lunch. We have a lot of, you know, we have Murphy's, we have,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, in
a
the
lot
case
of
of,
great outdoor places.
in the case of Bagel Table, there's a lot of
Yeah.
construction going on, so they may not wanna be outside anyway,
Right.
but they should have the option.
Right.
You're right,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that, for
Yeah.
sure.
I haven't seen anybody like at so there's a lot of outdoor places with nobody sitting outside, and
Yeah.
I think maybe they
And,
don't
well,
think they're allowed to at
yeah.
all.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
I just
Well, I
wanted to
can
know.
say
It's-
the Oregon Club made a decision on their own. They said,
Yeah.
no, we're too close to wetlands.
Yeah.
Okay,
So he said, he says, I know you say dusk, but I'm going all the
all
time.
day, yeah.
He says, I can't get them out there. The problem, he said, he's gonna, cause they were afternoon onward, he said, I get them out there, and then dusk comes about and they're still out there.
they're
Right.
sitting
You know,
chatting,
so,
Right.
and plus he said, we see mosquitoes
Right,
yeah.
often.
good for
so.
him, okay.
So some of them made their own decisions, above and beyond ours, but we can send them another reminder
Okay,
and say,
thank
just
you.
realize it's dusk to dawn.
Right,
Here's the chart, even send
right,
a
you know, a
chart
link
with
to
it.
the chart, yeah,
Send
or-
a chart.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
although they got it, but
Thank
again,
you.
how fast can they read something? So we can put it down to just the chart and the option.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now we got minutes. We got two sets of minutes, one from the 28th, and then one from the 3rd, so we'll take them separately. First, the 28th, if anyone wants to make a motion to approve them.
I move that we approve this minute for the 28th of August, as
Can-
presented.
Can I suggest one item on that? Because it was posted as an emergency meeting, I'm gonna ask that it have emergency meeting noted in emergency meeting minutes, the word emergency, because it was the reason we could meet
So
within a
amended.
day. Just add it like right there.
Moved it. Somebody needs to second that.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Ron, are you
Yeah, I mean,
abstaining because you weren't there?
I can agree to that part, though.
Okay,
It was an
sure.
emergency meeting. I can't
Just
vote
for
on
the
minutes.
technicality to record it, we'll
Correct.
go 3-0-1, right?
Oh, that,
Is abstaining.
On that, you're
well,
abstaining from
I'll abstain from
the,
from approving the
approving
minutes,
the
but
minutes, right, okay,
I agree with what he said.
yeah. Right,
Okay.
all right, September 3rd minutes.
Have no corrections, as far as I know. If it pleases, I move that the September 3rd minutes be approved as presented.
Have a second?
Second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. It's 4-0.
Which leads me to, do we have an update yet on the school project that we were promised before the beginning of school?
No.
No, okay. Other priorities, I understand, everybody's busy right now.
Well, that could certainly feed into discussing future agenda topics. So our next meeting is October 1st, and that is the public forum for our tobacco regulations. And while the meeting begins at 7, the public forum is scheduled for 7. Now, I know Diane will go over this probably more with you, but I'm kind of seeing, we can, there's not a ton of topics, so we can probably have citizens' participation then, and Mark do his update before the forum. That'll take us into the forum. And I'm thinking, there's a possibility that no one's gonna show up to this forum.
Yes.
Well, but you're also sending it to the vendors, aren't you?
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is, if nobody shows up, I feel like that we can take a vote at that point. You know, we don't need to wait a week, to disseminate feedback if nobody provides feedback, because we know how we feel.
Right.
Right? So I think that we should make mention on the agenda that if nobody attends the forum, that the board is gonna be ready to vote on it.
Right, but is there a way that we can publicize this rather than just posting on the website?
Well, the plan was to have a
Can you
new
put a
tobacco.
scroll on top of it as a public forum for tobacco regulations?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Update?
I don't know if we can scroll that. I see what you're
I think
saying.
we can.
We can check, for sure.
Yeah, I
See
think,
if we can scroll.
see now,
So when we
what I
post
wanna
our-
make sure
on the
is
website,
effectively
post.
communicated. What I
We wanna
don't want
scroll
is to have a house full of people coming here and talking about the things that we passed already. Because the only acceptable topics of discussion at that forum are those three changes that we made in yellow. The definition of smoke accessories, the requirement of a tobacco permit to sell them, and the requirement of the age of 21 to purchase them and to sell them. Those are the only things that are up for discussion.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
We need to be very clear on that.
So, but I think you will be opening that day, that's what I
Yep.
understand. So if you open it, can you just
Yeah, I'm gonna
mention that
moderate, I'm gonna
you
moderate
limit
that
the
forum.
discussion to only these three
Yep.
items.
Okay, and, so we kind of,
And you are sending it to the vendors anyway, definitely, all the vendors.
Yes, yeah. We're waiting to make sure this was officiated, and now we're ready to do it, roll it out. and-
Yep.
And we're gonna offer that I can go down and meet with them if they have any questions. And if
Okay.
Elliot's back on staff, we'll get him out this weekend,
great.
or the next weekend.
Or you have anyway email for them anyway, all of the vendors.
Yes, we do, yeah.
So
We're
with
getting
how,
good at
with
that.
how busy you are, if they call and want you to go visit them, I mean, can you just talk to them on the phone?
That's
or-
what I would do,
Yeah,
most likely.
okay.
Because sometimes they're not there too, that's the problem. Their
Right.
management, these larger corporations are not always there, like the gas stations.
So, yeah. So how many are there? 12?
17.
17, okay.
All right. I think that, we're looking good, right?
Yeah, and I'll place under my agenda, updates on that spill today, as well as, I'll go over my conference I went to, some of the information I gathered there at the next meeting, if time allows, so.
Mark, do we have anything to worry about with that oil spill today?
With the problem with the oil, well, I can talk off, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, why don't we,
It's okay, it's an emergency thing that came up today, so
Yeah,
if
but we
that's-
didn't post them,
if the
but,
chair can allow
but
that.
I would say I'm waiting on that report from the LSP.
Right, but you can
Yeah.
explain what happened in the
The
inspection.
minute I get something from the LSP, I'll update.
why don't we
the
put
board.
an update on next
Yeah.
meeting's agenda?
Right, in any case, I visited too, but it seems to be in a contained location.
Yeah.
And it has completely opaque fence, tall, sealed inside. That's
Good.
what I saw. And there were people working on it. I took a couple of pictures of who was working on it, the company.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Is anybody second?
I'll second that.
Anyone wanna discuss it? Take a vote? Aye.